All right, John. Florida State has 9 commits. I'm going to guesstimate at best 3 of those kids are solid. And it's because you're coming off 2-10. We don't have to dig into that. Everybody knows if you're following this podcast, you're into recruiting, you're into college football. But A, how do you solidify those commitments? And B, how do you add not only good players, but like they need O-line, like for the love of mankind, they got to start consistently recruiting O-line out of the high school ranks. They did it a little last year. Now I got to back it up. But what do they got to do to get into that upper echelon to grab some of those big-time guys?
Well, it's never been an issue of getting prospects to Tallahassee. That's something Mike Norvell's been extremely good at, regardless of circumstance. And the circumstance now is, hey, you got new assistants all over the place. Obviously, Gus Malzahn running the offense, new position coaches throughout. Defensively, same deal. You bring that whole Nebraska contingent down to Tallahassee. So for me, I think it's about getting those kids back on campus, which at least in principle right now, that box is checked. But 2, obviously, you got to nail it on those visits. You know, you're going to sit down intimately with Tony White, with these assistant coaches, with Knighton, and really sit down and preview what it could look like in Tallahassee going forward. And I think now, following spring ball, those pitches, those recruiting sales that are going down are a lot more realistic. You know your depth chart. The portal is basically done at this point. You know what it looks like relative to the class of 2026. So update that projection, update the board, and really, kind of go old school with it. NIL, all of that will take care of itself. Florida State is above average. It's not a program that is hurting as far as we know from NIL. So I think it's really on the coaches to create that familiarity with prospects very close to home. There's a lot of Panhandle, Central Florida, South Georgia recruits that are very, very good. A lot of blue chippers, several committed elsewhere already that are scheduled to go down to Tallahassee. So I think you got to play the flip game just as much as you're worried about holding on to your verbal commitments, because as you mentioned, more than half conservatively are considering multiple schools for official visits with those already penciled in, particularly that group of commitments in South Florida, right? Maycock, Darrell Bell, the third come to mind immediately. Tadarius Hughes, those guys are great players, all blue chips on Rivals.com, but all taking at least one other trip to another school in the weeks to come. So as much as you want to maintain, and that's going to be half the battle here for Florida State all the way through the season, you've got to be aggressive and play the flip game on the other side once you create that familiarity with some of these new coaches. I don't think it's a lack of effort thing from Mike Norvell. He's known for his energy. He's known for being consistent. He's known for being personal and being one of the great head coach recruiters in the country nationally. So I don't think it starts with him necessarily, but obviously he's got to delegate and play his time very well, because like for most of these schools, a lot of talent will be on campus all at one time. So how organized, how well oiled that thing looks with so many new faces will be key to Florida State as they pitch this, not necessarily culture changes. They just got to pitch, hey, like, we're getting back to it. Like it's bouncing back to what you saw in 2023. And that's the belief when you talk to Florida State commitments. That is their belief. Maybe they obviously grew up in state. They're doing really well in the state of Florida right now. And they say, hey, we believe it's going to bounce back. On the surface level, that is the first thing that has to hit home with this next group of targets. And then, like we said, many of them, Cam Brooks, Xavier Larice, Cameron Wilson down in Miami. These guys are committed to other programs right now that on the surface look like they're in better shape than Florida State with in-state recruits. I mean, that's something that can't happen. So you wonder how well they can execute in the weeks to come. But in terms of getting the talent on campus, which is just as tough as landing some of these guys, Florida State has never had an issue there, and it remains the case right now. It's just weird. I'm writing something about this at Rivals, as we speak in and out. It's just weird that it feels like Florida State's ceiling in ACC recruiting is third. That's just something that is, in my lifetime, certainly in my professional lifetime, over a dozen years in, has never been the case. The ceiling is always 1. The floor maybe is 3. Now it appears as if Clemson's off to such a strong start, and we'll talk about the crazy weekend they've got ahead, that they're going to be 1 or 2 at worst. Miami just got the number 1 player in the country. We know they're going to hit June very, very hard and contend for a 4th straight ACC recruiting title. So it just seems like Florida State is going all out for 3rd place, which is just unfamiliar territory, but perhaps the new reality in this day and age of recruiting.
Yeah, and I don't even guarantee 3rd. Syracuse is charging, among other programs.
SMU's been hot. I mean, let's not forget about those new guys, right?
Yeah, SMU's got serious NIL dollars, so that's something. Which guy do you think Florida State has to get? You and I talked this before the show, and like the Panhandle, South Georgia, it's debatable, but which one you got?
Yeah, I think the guy that you've harped on the most from the beginning is Cameron Brooks, currently committed at Cal, elsewhere in the ACC, but across the country, not down the road. He is going to take an official to Florida State in a couple of weeks, I think the weekend of June 6th. So the ball, once again, is in Florida State's court here. We understand, hey, look, new defensive staff, new defensive line coach, all of that stuff. Yes, now the ball is in Florida State's court. Can you cut the ground in between yourself and the Cal Bears and perhaps overcome them in the weeks and months to come? You could go Larisi, the Oregon commitment, lifelong Florida State fan. FSU slow to that party, right? The new staff came in with the offer. The previous one wasn't as high on the do-it-all prospect out of Ugali High School. He's one you could mention. And then those Panhandle guys. I mean, Trenton, Henderson, Kaiden Hall, lifelong FSU fan. Julius Miles right down the road. Jacoby Green's on campus this weekend. Any of those could be an answer. But for me, the biggest surprise in terms of where and when they committed, Cam Brooks to Cal, blue chip pass rusher, the type of trench player Florida State needs to get back to that 2023 form. So for me, all eyes are on him, in addition to holding on to some of those current commits. I think that's going to be just as big because almost all of them, as we've talked about, are looking at other programs.
Most intriguing for me in that regard, just want to bring this up. We don't have to dig into it, but it's ominous. Anytime your committed recruit goes on social media and randomly posts a picture of himself in another team's gear, that player would be Tredarius Hughes, like in Syracuse gear. Like a buddy of mine sent me, but I'm like, what is this? So Syracuse, by the way, I just want to give them a shout out. Their staff gets it done, man. Like that is Bram Brown and his staff put in effort. All applause on this end. But if you're Florida State, Tredarius Hughes cannot go to Syracuse over you. Politically, that's not a good look, John. That is not a good look.
And now what high school is he at? He's at Miami Northwestern. Yeah, so you talk about a double whammy, an in-state kid, again, lifelong fan, who ends up elsewhere in the conference out of a now state powerhouse high school. I mean, it's just bad dominoes lining up potentially there for Florida State. So yeah, it's the ACC is wide open, competitive. It's not chalk anymore. Heck, Clemson's number 1 right now. That alone, tells you how different it might be. It's not just Miami's race to lose anymore. Florida State fluctuating, and as you mentioned, Syracuse, SMU, right on their heels. And look, Georgia Tech's got a lot of the great prospects, on campus in the next few weeks. They could be sneaky down the road as well. They on the field feeling pretty good in Atlanta. So if all of that lines up, maybe they make an ACC title game run, what have you, that could be really bad, for Florida State. So there's a lot of dominoes and ripple effects to consider. But no doubt Florida State's going to be affected one way or the other.